Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Jedera. My name is Gerwin, and tonight I'm going to focus on something that is often forgotten about when gardening, and that is looking at your site design, your details on the site, so the property that you're working on, what are its climatic features. A lot of people take into consideration frost dates, but there's a lot of other things that are incredibly important, and other observations that can be made from a weather perspective and other design elements. So when you're doing a permaculture design on a property, the first thing you need to do is find out what a client wants. After that, the next thing you need to do is actually do a detailed site analysis and observations of the property to find out what the unique properties are of this property. So what are its needs? What are its requirements? What are its challenges? What are its bonuses? All that sort of stuff. So we're going to look at what those sort of things are for my property and how to find that information in Australia. So yeah, okay, let's get into it. So my property is located in Lockyer waters. I've actually got this information on my website as well. I'll leave the link in the description. So in Lockyer Valley in Queensland. So I'll show you that on the map. So this is Australia. Obviously, this is Queensland, and if we zoom right in here, where this little red dot is, that's where Lockyer Waters is. So, and the Lockyer Valley is in that area as well. So then you've got Toowoomba here, and you've got Brisbane here, and Gatton's there. There's some of the other big cities. So yes, so that is where Lockyer Waters is. It's a very important information. And we'll break that down a lot further. So the latitude and longitude, it's minus 27.45 degrees latitude, and the longitude is 152.45 degrees. Altitude is, 74 meters above sea level here and 76 meters above sea level at this end. So the property, this here is actually a picture of my property. These are the boundaries. And these are the contour lines, not that you can see them hugely clearly in this photo. And I'll get there's another photo down the bottom that has a lot more detail. But yes, so the size of my property is 10 acres or 44,380 meters squared. So that's the size of the property. My nearest mountain range is the Lockyer Valley National Park, which is about 400 meters above sea level. So it's over about here, or probably about here somewhere. And Mount Teamperature is 5 kilometres away, so it's over this way, and it's about 150 metres above sea level. And Toowoomba is a long way to the west, and it's 600 metres above sea level. So yeah, so that's my closest mountain ranges. So that's also important. It's important to know that I'm living in a valley. That actually makes a difference to your weather patterns. A lot of times, when we see storms coming up over the Toowoomba Range, they will actually split. So it'll go to Gatton and it'll go to Wivenhoe or Atkinson's Dam or something like that, and it'll miss Lockyer Waters. And part of that is because of the Lockyer Valley National Park and the other mountain ranges that are around the place. They are affecting the way the weather and the way the rain actually goes. It's quite funny, actually. The locals go, it's Lockyer, no waters. And it has actually been for the last few years. There wasn't a lot of rain around the place, but I'll get into that further in a little bit. So what is the distance from the ocean? So it's 79 kilometres. So we'll go back here. So 79 kilometres from here to there. I think it was there, actually. So I took it from the other side of Stradbroke Island. So yes, so 79 kilometres from the east coast. Another important aspect to know when you're actually doing your design. And one thing I noticed, like when I was at Eagleby, I was a lot closer to the coastline. I'll go back over there. So Eagleby is like here. And there was a lot more salt in the air. And the air was a lot more humid. It's a lot drier out here than it was at Eagleby. So a very different climate, completely different climate. So next question is, what is your distance to the nearest population centre? This is really important, especially if you're looking at making your property a viable income generating opportunity, and also from the perspective of being able to purchase supplies and being able to what resources are close to you is incredibly important. I know Joel Salatin says he would rather buy a 10-acre property for $100,000 closer to the city than buy 100 acres for $10,000 further away, because that extra money that is going to cost you to travel, to find customers, to find resources, to find supplies, is going to eat up all of the money that you've saved by moving out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, okay. So next thing that's important to know is what is the property's previous use historically. So yeah, our property, from what I've been told, it used to be a turf farm at one point, which makes me think that a lot of the topsoil has been taken away during that process. I could be wrong, but a lot of topsoil was taken away from that process. I know at the end of that whole turf farm bit, they actually did improve the pastures and put down seeds and all that sort of thing to help the pastures grow, but that was over 20 years ago, so it's a long, long time ago, and not a lot's been done to improve the pastures since. Anyway, so the previous owners planted a vineyard out the front. So looking on the property map, there's a little vineyard trellis over here. The other thing that they did was they planted an orchard area over here, and I believe they actually put the contour ditches along the side here that actually come down to the dam. So I think they may have been responsible for that. I'm not 100% certain, but you can see on this map where the contour lines are. So yeah, so that's one of the contour lines, and there are drainage ditches that go from these straight into the dam. And when the dam is low, when this aerial picture was taken on Google, the dam was very low, and it had actually, you could see the two separate sections of it. So there is actually a bank in the middle, for want of a better explanation. So technically it's two dams that have just become one. I'm not sure. One was dug after the first one. Anyway, so there's not a lot of slope in the property, but this is basically the higher part of the property, and this is the lower part. So yes, so the previous owners, the people that we bought it from, I've been friends with them for decades. I grew up with their daughter, and I actually fell in love with this property 20 years ago when they bought the place, and loved the fact that it had the orchards and it had the vineyards and it had irrigation stuff all set up. There was just so much. It was brilliant. But my friends weren't gardeners. They came from the city. They didn't know much about gardening. They weren't farmers. So they had a few horses. They had a couple of cows. They had some birds. Well, they did have a couple of chickens, but it was mostly like canaries and that sort of thing. And my friend works incredibly long hours, so she didn't really have a lot of time to put into the property. But they did have some horses that they really liked. So yes, so that's. But the problem with that is they actually continually grazed the property, so they didn't do the rotational grazing. They didn't have. There are a few different paddocks around the property, but they basically had all of the gates open, and the animals were able to travel over most of it. This section at the front here was separated a little bit, so it didn't get as much grazing happening, and honestly part of it is undergrazed, so it's a very interesting section of the property. I've actually been putting the goats over in this section, and the parts where I've had the goats has actually really significantly improved. Now this down here is most of these trees are actually now dead after all of the drought that's been happening. This paddock here, my friends had two little ponies in for 5 years plus. These trees at the front here, these trees all around the house, they were planted probably by the previous owners, and we've actually taken down these trees here because they were clogging up our gutters and causing a lot of problem for water catchment. So we got those turned into wood chips, which we're going to use to actually increase the water holding capacity of a lot of spots on the property. So yeah, there were big problems with those trees. The leaves were dropping into the gutters and fermenting and tainting the water and making it a real problem and making it so the gutters were constantly full of leaves. So, and currently we've got on the property, we've got aquaponics, we've got goats, we've got chickens, we've got various herbs growing all over the place and kitchen garden type thing. So we haven't done a lot since we've been here. We've been here for well, we started renting the property about 12 months ago and then finally purchased it in September. So that's like nearly 6 months ago. So we've owned the property for about 6 months. And in that time, I've had quite a few injuries that have made it rather difficult for me to do a lot. So I had a car accident in September just after we purchased the place and ended up with whiplash, which has made it impossible for me to be able to do fencing and many other things. So a lot of things that I would have liked to have done by now, I haven't been able to do. So I've had this 12 months to observe the property, which has been really interesting. So that's basically the site details. The next thing you want to look at is observations of weather patterns and everything in the area. So the climatic factors. The first thing I'm going to look at is the Köppen climate classification for this area. So this area is actually considered a temperate, no dry season, hot summer. So it's a CWA. Now, the Köppen climate classification is a fairly, I'll come down here. So the Köppen climate classification is one of the most widely used climate classification systems. It was published by a German-Russian climatologist, I can't pronounce that, back in 1846 to 1940. So yeah, basically the way it works is the Köppen climate classification divides climates into 5 main climate groups, with each group being divided based on seasonal precipitation and temperature patterns. The 5 main groups are A, tropical, B, dry, C, temperate, D, continental, and E, polar. So it actually has them all colour-coded on this map, and the colour codes are down here. So now to actually look at Australia, so there's actually a map down below this, but I've opened it in another page. So basically where we are in the map is around here. So come back here. So you can see there's that little bit of an island. Stradbroke Island is just there. And that's Stradbroke Island just there. So we're in this light green section, which is this one here. No, that one, sorry. The temperate, no dry season. Now, I find it interesting that it says no dry season, but so we have a drier season. But we'll look at that in a minute, so we'll get a lot closer to that. So there's a lot more information on this Wikipedia page, and I'll leave a link to this in the description so that you can check it out and see how your area is affected and which area classification you've got. So you've got 2 areas in the temperate section, and we've got the hot summer and the dry winter. Oh, that's not what it said. I think it's that one. CFA. Sorry, we're CFA. Yeah. Although we do really have a bit of a dry winter. Although there are times when we have a wet winter as well. So it's a little bit, climate is funny everywhere. But yeah, if you scroll right down to the bottom of this page, oh, gone and messed myself up now. Take that back. Oh, sorry about that. Take that out a bit. So if you go right down to the bottom of this page, scroll right down, it has a lot more detail on the different areas, but down here it's got a larger area of each of the maps, and I just clicked on that one before and it gives me a larger version to be able to look at. So yeah, it just makes it so you can actually see what it was. So that's what this one is. Okay, so that's that part. Okay, so what is a plant hardiness zone? Okay, a plant hardiness zone basically, so this has been done by the Australian National Botanical Gardens, and they've adapted the USDA's plant hardiness zones so that they kind of match up. There are a few things that didn't quite work, so they've had to adapt to them slightly, but I'll put a link to this in the description as well. But this basically shows where the hardiness zones apply to different parts of Australia, and I'm in that little section there. So again, this is zone 4. So zone 4, because of this warming effect, covers a broad area from coastal Queensland across the continent of Shark Bay and Geraldton in the west. Also includes Mountain Peninsula area, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't, there's more information here, so feel free to have a look, but that's that basic information on the plant hardiness zone that I'm in. Okay, average annual rainfall. So I've gotten information from a variety of different sources for all of this information, but the average annual rainfall here is 731 millimetres or 28.8 inches for my friends in America. So I got that information from the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. So the highest recorded rainfall was annually was 1,204.2 millimetres or 47.4 inches. The lowest recorded rainfall was 538.5 millimetre or 21.1 inches. Now the highest recorded rainfall in a 24-hour period occurrence was 199.4 millimetre on the 26th of January, and I forgot to convert that to inches. I'm very sorry. It looks like I've forgotten to do some of the other ones down there too. Anyway, so the highest recorded temperature in my area is 45.7 degrees, and I haven't got the Fahrenheit conversion on that. Sorry about that. Actually, just give me a second. Okay, so I've just checked my converter. I've got my converter on my phone, and the 199.4 millimetres of rain up here was actually 7.85 inches. So that was in a 24-hour time period. Okay, and I've just converted the 45.7, so 45.7. Oh, don't know if you can see that. But yeah, it's 114 degrees Fahrenheit. And the minus 56, minus 5, not 56, minus 5.6. Is 21 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, so the average low temperature in summer is 19 degrees or 66 degrees Fahrenheit. The average summer temperature for the high, so the maximum, is 31 degrees or 88 Fahrenheit. Now, as it said up here, it says the highest record temperature was 45.7. A lot of locals have told me that it actually gets up to 48 degrees here in Lockyer waters, because these figures are actually from either Atkinson's Dam, which is 66 kilometres to the north, or Gatton, which is 12 kilometres to the south. So we're a little bit different here, but these are just going to give me a bit of an idea. So average winter temperature is 7 degrees or 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The lowest on record, as I said earlier, was minus 5.6 or 21 Fahrenheit. The average winter temperature high is 22 degrees or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So we still have it is a very mild climate that we live in. Now wileyweather.com.au is where I've gotten some of my information from, and this gives you a nice little snapshot. So I've come in here, I put the postcode down and all that sort of thing, and it tells you what the temperature is right now. And this is really interesting. I'm going to get into this in a minute. But it tells me here where the 45 degrees was, and that was on the 12th of February 2017. And then the low temperature was minus 5.6. The highest rain The strongest wind was 189 kilometres. Pardon me, the longest consecutive days of rain was 19, and 75 consecutive days of no rain was the longest consecutive days of no rain. This graph here shows you the rainfall averages for the different months. So yeah, technically we have not gotten this much rain, but this is actually averaged out over all time, so from 1897 all the way to today. If I take it to 10 years, so this takes in just the last 10 years, you can see the rainfall has changed considerably. And if we bring it down to the last 5 years, you can see it's dropped even further. So the last 5 years have been a considerable challenge for the area. Yes, and it's actually known as Brisbane's breadbasket and salad bowl, this area. Well, not the breadbasket actually, because we don't grow a lot of wheat. We do more salad greens and all that sort of thing. So it's the salad basket area of Australia. Now, on the rainfall aspect, this little graph that they've got here actually shows from 1st of January 1965 all the way to here. So it gives you the average temperatures and all that sort of stuff. So we've got the temperature data. So the temperature hasn't really done a huge amount over the years, although it does seem to have had a bit of a spike this year. Yeah, what I am finding very interesting on this is actually the rainfall. And it's something I've heard from quite a few locals, is that we've had well below average rain for the last 4 years. Adam from Silverlet Park Farm actually says that we've been in a 4-year drought. And if you look at this data, yeah, he's pretty right. So this goes over the last 4 years, and the rainfall has been well below average. So this here is where the yearly average rainfall is, and it's actually been going down for longer than 4 years actually. So 2017 was the last average rainfall, and even that was a lot lower. It was the lower high than previous highs have been. So it's been decreasing significantly. So up here you've got the 1,000 millimetres, and that is a significant difference to 2019. It was only 230 millimetres. Then we got 455 millimetres in 2020, and 2021. Obviously, it hasn't finished yet, but it's definitely been well below average for a significant amount of time, and that's causing some major problems. So yes, so that's really interesting to be able to see this data, and stories that I've heard from locals definitely corroborates this and backs this up. They said that it used to be really easy to keep your garden growing in the soil here, and now it is not. Now the locals say you can't keep anything alive. Now, my back neighbour, Drew, go back to my property picture, which was on the previous page. Go back to here. So Drew, his back fence is over here. So that's Southdown Water and Farm and Forge. He's just up here. He is growing wonderfully in the dirt. So he is using a lot of permaculture principles in his growing and gardening and composting and adding organic matter to the soil, and he's putting swales in, and he's increased the size of his dam and everything. It's really good. He's done a fantastic job. But historically we have not had rainfall this low before in this area, and it's a vast difference from what I'm used to in Eagleby. Eagleby's rainfall was a lot higher than this. So yes, but this also this particular website can show you a lot of other things as well. So you've got the humidity that it can show you, although it's only been tracking that for a little while in this area. So you've got the dew point. You don't have the frost dates here, but you've got the temperature. So the temperature data shows you the low areas there. I'll take that rain off for now. So it's got the year's average minimum. So, and you can go from that as to when the frost date's going to be, because if it's under 2 degrees, I think it is, there's a chance of frost. But yeah, so how I got the data for the rainfall is I came onto the Bureau of Meteorology and went through that sort of thing. And I've done a video on how to actually do that. For those of you who live in Australia. If you don't live in Australia, it's probably not that much use, other than just from the interesting factor of knowing how what my property is like. So this is Gatton, and Gatton's latitude and longitude. It's 89 metres above sea level. So yes, and it's got its mean and average rainfall and temperatures and all of that sort of good information. And here, this was the Atkinson's Dam. So Atkinson's Dam is 6 kilometres from me, and it gives a little bit more information. So it shows you the actual rain totals for the Atkinson's Dam from a daily perspective, and it tells you how much the monthly rainfalls were in the highest daily. And then you've got the statistical information down here, so it actually shows the highest daily rainfall was on the 11th of January 2011, and then 1999 had 116 millimetres. So it gives you all this information. So yeah, just some interesting data that you can sift through just to get an idea as to more information about your property. Now this one's probably more useful for knowing when your frost date's going to be, from the perspective of it tells you the lowest. So I've got this set. So this again is from BOM, and it shows you the average high and for the month and all that sort of thing. So you can look at, there's lots of information. So May is when I'm likely to start having issues with frost, right through possibly until September. So I'll have to make sure that I plant cold hardy crops during that time, or at least protect my cold hardy crops, my frost tender crops. Oh, I'm not sure what they're called. I've never actually had to deal with frost before because I never had it at Iggleby. So this is a bit of a new experience. The other thing I found was eldersweather.com. They showed me, so this is the Lockyer Water's average number of days with temperatures. So this is the average number of days that we're likely to have above 40 degrees. So there's a few, all the way from October through to April can be above 40 degrees. Above 35 degrees, yeah, from January through to April, and September through right till April. So days above 30 degrees, you've got all the way from August all the way to May. So we can have, and so you can see there's going to be rather large temperature swings in these days. So days below 2 degrees, so that's when your chances of frost are, start in May and go through to September. And then days below 0, I've got, so June through to August, it looks like, are the days that I'm likely to have below 0. So you can see there are some significant temperature swings through May. May to August, there can be some very significant temperature swings. So all the way from 30 degrees right down to 2 degrees. That's fairly significant. So yeah, so that's basically weather in Lockyer Waters in a nutshell. The Elders Weather Climate History website has other interesting information on it as well that you might find useful. But that one's a really interesting little graph. Other than that, BOM and Willy Weather, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Willy Weather's got all sorts of things. Oh, the other thing they've got here is actually the wind, and this I found really interesting because you can actually see what it's like over the different months. So let's go to January. So all months, the predominant wind is actually a westerly wind. So let's look at January. So in January, the wind actually predominantly comes from the east. So, and that's really interesting. It shows you how strong the wind is likely to be. So that's that. And then February, it's gradually coming around this way, more of a southeast thing happening. Then March, we've got a little bit happening over here in the west, but mostly over in the southeast. You come into April, and you're starting to swing a lot more over to the westerlies. May is predominantly westerly. June, again, predominantly westerly. So in winter, we've got predominantly westerly winds. And August, I found this really fascinating. So August, again, predominantly westerly winds. And of course, I mean, September to August, you've got the Eka around then. So it's always got the Eka winds. And yeah, they're westerly and southwesterly. But you can see it's starting to come back around again. Then you've got October, and October is splitting back over the two. And November is probably more over here. So more easterly, but it's a bit both ways. And then December is predominantly the easterly wind. So I just thought it was really interesting to actually be able to see that and how it changes. Now you can check that over the 1 year, which I actually haven't done. So yeah, it looks like it's pretty much the same. I don't think much has changed. So yeah, really interesting information, and it's good information to know, especially when you're doing a permaculture design of your property. I went through that, didn't I? Oh no, we're looking at that one. So that's the average rainfall details and the wind. So the potential for extreme weather events on this property is we have got the risk of drought. Like we have been in a drought for the last 4 years or so. And hopefully the rain that we've gotten will break that drought, but it's still well below average rainfall that we've had so far this year. We also have the potential of flood. My particular property historically has not flooded. It has got sheet water that runs across it. So the water runs from the top of the property down, or it runs across the property basically, and strong winds. So wildly willy wind. Said the strongest winds are in 2011. It was 189 kilometres. So that's a decent wind. You don't want to mess around with that one. So yes, so there are definitely some issues, and as I showed you in that on the Willy Wind website, there is significant seasonal variation in the wind. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. Now there's a lot more to a permaculture design and more observations and research that you can do, and I will be doing more in the future. I just haven't quite finished, but that is my property in a nutshell. A general rundown of the property and its current situation is that the property has a severe lack of organic matter in the soil. It does not, the water holding capacity is not what it needs to be. I need to increase the water holding capacity of the soil. The number of grazing days is just not what it should be. My friends had 2 horses, a cow, and 2 ponies, and this 10-acre property wasn't able to feed them. So it's, and my understanding is generally the idea is 1 acre per animal. So I know using permaculture I can correct a lot of that using the chickens and the goats and moving them around and all of that sort of stuff, and planting the right plants in there and going with that sort of stuff. So, but first thing you need to do is actually identify what the challenges are. We do have the risk of strong winds from the west and from the east. I do want to plant some wind protection on both sides of the property, not to block it completely, but to just diffuse that diffuse that wind. I also want to slow the water down as it moves across the property. And the biggest problems we face at the moment is the 4-year drought that we've been in, and God willing that is now broken or breaking. But looking at the figures, it's not looking promising. So yeah, the lack of organic matter in the drought is the biggest problems we have. Generally speaking though, climatically, we should be in a perfect growing range. We don't get snow. We don't get severe frosts. We do get black frosts. So I've been told by neighbours, but not a lot of them. And yeah, that's basically it. I hope that's been interesting and you found it helpful. I'll leave the links to the websites that I've used in this, and have a great one. Bless you. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Share this video around with anyone you know that's looking for information on how to research what their property details are. And I look forward to hearing in the comments below what your hardiness zone is. What Copenhagen climate factor have you got? What are your minimum and maximum temperatures? What's the maximum amount of rain your area's had in 24 hours? I mean, that's an important information to have so that you can make sure that your ground can actually hold that amount of water. There's a lot of interesting information out there in the regenerative agricultural arena where people start with testing their property and seeing that they can only hold 10 mil of rain in an hour, and within 10 years they can absorb 200 mil in an hour. So yeah, really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we can actually work with this property over the coming years. So yeah, I hope you found that helpful. Share the video around, like the video please, and remember to subscribe to the channel to hear lots of information and to watch the journey of this property as it goes through. Have a great one. Bless you.